the alarm rings in the morning and you can't get out of bed. You can't get through another day. You make it to the office and you're just staring at your work and you're skipping your lunch breaks, trying to catch up on your work, and you're just fully exhausted. Today on Grief Space, I have a guest with me, Edie Anne Pelletier. She's an author, a podcaster, and she really understands where you are at on what she has created called the emotional gauge. And today I'd like to welcome Edie and talk today a little bit about your struggles and how you got to the emotional gauge.
I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Lisa. I appreciate it.
Tell us a little bit about what the emotional gauge is and its birth and how it came about through your own life.
Sure. The emotion gauge kind of birthed itself when a realization came to me that the experiences that I had gone through in my life had created this arc, for a lack of better terms, of going through different levels of emotion to get to another level, like to get me out of a certain time that I was in my life, whether it be loss or illness or whatever the case may be. And when I realized that each level had a name, that's when the healing started. And so once I was able to kind of just came to me, um, and the names allowed me insight. And the more insight you have, the more knowledge you have, the better understanding you have for yourself and for your healing process. And so that's how the emotion gauge came to be. And it's always been my goal to get to those joyous moments in life. And we all know that you're not going to be joyful 100% of the time. It's just inevitably impossible because of our environment and the things that are coming at us every day. But that's the goal, right? Is that we can have more joyful moments, even more moments of hope. And so this gauge is kind of separated into two halves. There's four on each side, and there's a bridge in the middle. And that bridge is pretty significant because we tend to teeter back and forth through these emotions often, sometimes within a day, sometimes within an hour, sometimes within a second or two, depending on what you're dealing with. And so that's where the emotion gauge comes from. And I like naming things because it allows us that ability to kind of say, yep, that's what that is. And this is who I am. And so with the emotion gauge, it allows us to do that. It starts with disengaged, survival, victim, frustration. Then here's your bridge. And then you have hopeful, empowered, aligned, and then ultimately joyful. And the key is not to stay in any one of these for any length of time. The key is to understand them so that if you are on the red side, you can help yourself get closer to the blue side.
So, to help the audience understand, Edie, you have two books out right now and a workbook. And then this emotion gauge is a tool that goes with that. We will have in the show notes links to the books and the workbook and describe the e-course that's coming.
Sure. The e-course is video and self-paced. So basically, an individual can sign up for this course. They can go through the levels. And if I could preface back just a moment, Lisa, the foundation book that I have, which is the blue one back here, that's the first book that was written. And it does have an overview of all 8 levels on the emotion gauge. And it talks about them. It lets you recognize yourself in them, and then it gives you a few steps to help you get through to the potential next level. Well, the course is very similar to that. The book is a very good overview with steps that you can take in purpose, and the course is a little bit more not in depth, but more targeted towards the implementation of those steps rather than just the understanding of the levels. And the course is available. It launched this month, so that's exciting. And it's allowing people to do it at their own pace. It's visual because of the videos. There's also, you're going to get the pocket guide, which has some quick tips on things that you can do immediately to get to the next level. It comes with the workbook. So the course comes with all the tools for the most part, whereas the books are the books. And then volume one is disengaged. What you're going to find in the coming year is a book for each of the levels. And so disengaged has already been released. I just finished the draft of volume two, which is survival, and I'm working on the other ones. So yeah.
Well, I have read the initial book and Disengaged. I'm mostly through it. And people, you want to read these books. They're helpful. They're helpful for you to name where you're at or where your loved one is at. And we will be putting those in the show notes. So, Edie, we're talking about a person at work. We're talking about a person who's disengaged. And as I described in the introduction of this podcast, they're tired, they can't focus, you know all the things. What would some of the red flags be for you to look out for somebody who is going through a difficult loss and they're at the point of actual disengagement?
Yeah. I mean, that word in itself is very visual to what an individual will look like when they're disengaged. They're going to be disconnected. They're not going to want to have conversations. They're going to be in at exactly 8 o'clock and potentially be ready to leave at exactly 5 o'clock. There's not going to be this overlap of time and space that they're going to want to spend with people. The majority of someone that is disengaged is doing the very minimum of what they have to do in life. And a lot of times that's work, right? We have to work. It's a way for us to pay for our means. Um, you might even find that that's becoming a disengagement because they call out sick a lot, or they don't show up for work, or they're late, or they're trying to leave earlier. They have lots of appointments that they're leaving for. And so some of those red flags are going to be a lot more noticeable for someone in a leadership position that is engaging with their employees, right? You want to be noticing what's happening around them. And if you don't notice, then you'll see less and less of them.
And also the act of being an autopilot too,
Mhm.
not
Yes.
wanting to accept any extra
Mhm.
challenges, not being able to accept any extra challenges. So when you're looking out for somebody who's disengaged, you're also looking at a person who just might be at the point of putting in their notice to quit.
Mm.
So that's why I say leadership and coworkers need to keep an eye on this because we don't want to lose good quality people. We know through the statistics show from many studies that work absenteeism is high and also quiet quitting is high too when you are in stress mode and in survival mode too.
Mm.
We also talked about being in alignment at one point in one of our conversations, Edie. Let's elaborate on being aligned to your purpose and identity as being perhaps a rescue from disengagement.
I think the alignment part of that is probably not going to be recognized by the individual that's in disengaged. It's going to need to have someone to prompt, to potentially help them see a different viewpoint, right? Because from a perspective of someone that's in disengaged, they're not going to be aligned. They're going to struggle with even that visual part of wanting to be aligned. Like to them it's going to feel pushy. Like just leave me alone. I don't want to do that right now, or I don't want to talk about that right now, or I don't want to put myself in that position right now. And when you're looking at somebody that's trying, the helper, right? The helper is going to need to help them see, like, I think it's important that the helper is not going to push them into the next level, because ultimately what's going to happen is a disengaged person is going to disconnect even more. And in truth, disengaged people could also be in a place of not wanting to be around anymore. You can teeter on a very thin line if you're being too pushy to someone who's in disengaged. And I want to make sure that people understand that being in any of these levels is not a mistake. It's not a fault. It's not something you're doing wrong. It's a mechanism that our human body has created to put ourselves in a safe place, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so being disengaged and resting and doing nothing is actually doing something. And so for the helper, they need to make sure that they are aligning themselves with knowledge of what a disengaged person would be like and how receiving they would be, right? And I know, Lisa, you and I talked about this wavy line in disengaged is that you're going to have more teeter tottering on this road, right? Where you're like, oh, I want to do this. Nope, I don't. Oh, let's try this. Nope, I don't want to do that. And sometimes you might stay on the no side a little bit too long, and that's where you end up going back to bed and not wanting to do anything or disengaging with people altogether or disconnecting from people altogether. Whereas if you are on the side of, well, let's try that, and then you go back to no, if somebody is paying attention and they're wanting to be the helper, they're going to notice that. And if there is a moment where that potential, let's try something different, that's when the helper wants to align themselves to say, okay, where are they at right now? And what can we implement that's teeny tiny that can help move them more into that yes direction?
It reminds me of one of the things that I encourage my clients to do is if you wanna be a helper to somebody who is going through a grieving process or any stressful situation, they are disengaged, take them for a car ride because it seems to be a safe place for people to be. They don't have to be eye contact. They don't have to dress up. If they don't feel like taking a shower that day, they just take me for a car ride and we'll just talk. That can be one of the very first movements, and even in a car ride in the dark because of the stimulation around is so minimal and the eye contact is not necessary, but you do have the conversation or maybe you don't, but you do have that connection. So to provide people with a space that is safe. And the first thing that is lost and could be lost forever is trust. Make sure when you're working with somebody that the sidebar conversations and the triangulation does not happen in the workspace. People can catch on to whether you're talking about them or not, and as they're hypersensitive during a time like this, you wanna make sure you guard your friendship or relationship closely by not repeating some of the things that you get from working or communicating with a person who's going through this difficult time. Make sure you don't lose their trust. As coaching, we keep confidentiality right way at the top of our list, way at the top because we know that people who are going through a very difficult time can perhaps trust somebody outside of the scope of their social network with a coach or a therapist or one-on-one with somebody who has nothing to do with their life. Just somebody completely detached gives them that safe space. The title of this is But It's Possible. Please elaborate on but what's possible.
Okay. There's something that I learned in the past that's called right language. And when we use the right language at the right time, it can hold a lot of power. And the word but is one of those words. And so when you use that word in a sentence, anything that you said prior to the word but kind of get negates. It kind of gets taken out of the equation. And then anything that's said thereafter becomes the truth of that statement. And so one of the things that I was taught in the past was that when you are trying to um, get to a space of hope, a lot of times we talk to ourselves out of it, right? So, for instance, I am rich. I'm just going to use an affirmation just so that we understand the concept of this. If you say I am rich, a lot of times that little negative person on your shoulder is like, yeah, okay, Edie. Yeah, you're rich. Sure shows it. Okay. And so you're having these conversations with yourself and arguing with what you're trying to have hope on. right? And we've learned through the law of attraction that when you state things, your mind will focus on it and then bring more of that into your life because that's what you're focusing on. Well, at one point, I was getting to the point where my little negative Edie was talking a little bit too loud. And I had brought it to a friend of mine, and she said, "Well, I want you to try this." She said, "When you say it, when your little negative person starts to hype back, say, but it's possible." And so when I say, "I am rich," okay, Edie, but it's possible. So what happens is when I say but, it negates the feeling of that little negative person because that was the last thing stated, right? It's not negating the I am rich because it was that thought of, no, you're not. Like, that's what it's negating. And then it's saying, but it's possible to be rich, right? And so that hope gets instilled just with a grain of salt or a mustard seed. It's very small. It's implementing that bit of hope that allows you to move forward rather than getting stuck in that negative state, right? And I take it even further than that. And I say, okay, that's great. You're still going to have little negative Edie over here barking at you because you're not rich yet, but it's possible. And so what I did is I changed that to thank you for making me rich. And when you change it to a voice of gratitude, you can't have negativity around it. It's impossible,
Mhm.
right? For something that might not have happened yet, but there's always possibility when you're in gratitude mode.
Mhm.
So, that in aligning our minds to focus on that is super important in healing work because like we know when we're in disengaged, we kind of sit there too long sometimes in that negative stew and it just keeps getting hotter. So,
Yeah. You're going through the motions and you feel stuck, you feel like you're in a funk and you're never gonna get out. You've gone through a divorce, you've
mhm.
lost someone special to death. Your son or your daughter is in jail for crime. You feel like you're never going to be able to be yourself again. So you take it day by day, which is very true, and you go into work and you say, I am stuck, but I got up and I went to work. Here I am in the car, and it is possible that I can get 10 more done today than I did yesterday. It's possible. It is possible. So that kind of self-talk helps you get out of that funk a little bit. And then you as an external observer could could encourage that. You can be that person who introduces the words, "But it's possible, right? Let's just try a little further. Okay, you did 5 yesterday. Let's try to do 7 today. Maybe it'll be 6, but it's possible, right?" Yeah, that gives a lot of hope, which is another thing on your spectrum.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is. And I think too, it's important as the helper to understand that maybe a car drive is too much for them,
right.
right? It might
Mhm,
just be that they need somebody to come and see if they're okay at home because they called in sick. Who knows, right? But like on the back of the card, you're going to see some quick what I'm calling these are quick tips. So for disengaged to get into survival, which is the next level, notice surroundings without judgment. And I think the biggest takeaway today is I want to make sure that people give yourselves grace if you're the one in disengagement and give people grace that might be in disengagement, right? Because it's a healing moment. This is not a bad thing. It's not, they didn't do something wrong to get there. It's their body trying to keep them safe. And so sometimes just sitting on your bed and if it's you doing this and you're trying to get out of that disengaged moment, say how many red things can I find in my room today? That's it. And so now at least you're noticing your surroundings, you're shifting something in your brain that says I don't want to be stuck. And so if I'm looking for something different, I won't be stuck. Right?
right.
And then the other thing is writing one small gratitude today. And it could be, I sat on the edge of my bed,
Mhm,
or I made a cup of coffee today,
yes.
or I ate supper last night. Or it could be I put my pajamas on today and got out of bed and put a robe on.
Mhm.
Or I got in the car and I went to work.
Yes. And
Like,
write those things down.
yeah,
There's
yeah,
just something
right.
about pen to brain.
Mhm.
There will be a shift if you do the pen to brain. Write down what you're thankful for. If you don't want anyone to see it, just rip it up and throw it out,
Yeah,
but write it down.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's so healing to have so much grace for yourself that just sitting on the edge of the bed with your feet hanging over your slippers is something that you're going to feel grateful for. Guess what? You're going to start seeing things that you do on an everyday basis that you're like, I brushed my teeth today, or I took a shower. Like, that's huge for some people, right?
Yes.
So once you start doing that, and again, this is the law of attraction, this is something that happens. It's called the reticular activating
Mhm.
system, and it attracts like things. So I'm going to use an analogy story. You go to the dealership, you purchase a yellow car. Don't see yellow cars on the road very much at all. But lo and behold, you buy this yellow car, and the first car you see when you're driving off the lot is a yellow car. It doesn't mean that those yellow cars all of a sudden just showed up for you. No, they were always there, but now they're in your awareness because you brought it there. So, if you're thinking about things and you're noticing things more often, your subconscious mind is going to be like, oh, that's important to her. So, we're going to show her more because they're out there and we're going to prove it to her. And so, the more times you are showing gratitude for the little things, more and more will start to show up. And that's very healing in its own. And
And
especially when you're disengaged, because in disengaged, you're not wanting to notice stuff.
one of the things that I recommend for my clients to activate the reticular activating system is a vision board,
Mm,
and to take
yep.
those items that you see victory in or that trigger you to positivity, put them on a collage, make them a part of your screensaver. The people we're talking about are actually in crisis mode, most of them. And we need to talk about our identity and as it relates to alignment with our purpose. And then also as our identity relates to victim mentality and victory mentality. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. That's a huge thing for me in regards to identity. And that's the main reason why you will, in all of the books or the course or everything that I'm doing, is one of the very first things we do is name it. Because an emotion does not make who we are. I am not an emotion. If I'm sad, I just gave myself that identity because I said I am. I am sad. No, I'm not sad. I'm feeling sad, right? And I know teachers are taught to not direct emotions at children. You are being, or you are bad, or you are loud, or you are talkative, or whatever. No, you are being, right? We're making it into an action versus an identity. How we talk to ourselves, how we treat ourselves, because ultimately that's how we talk to others and how we treat others, right? And so if you're in disengaged and you're feeling disengaged, saying I am disengaged makes you disengaged as a person. And when we can separate that, when we can separate the emotion from our identity, it gives us permission to leave it behind.
Yeah,
When we take it on as our own personality and who we are, we don't want to leave it behind because it's who we are. But when
exactly.
you've separated that and you've given a name to it and you say, no, this is disengaged. Yes, I might be feeling that right now, but it's not mine to keep and I'm going to leave it here. So now I can go on to something else. But when you don't name it and separate it from who you are as a person, you tend to want to hold on to it. And so it is super important to name your emotion, recognize your emotion, know that it's what you're feeling, and not who you are.
Mhm. That's great, Edie.
Yeah.
We talked today about identity, we talked about alignment, and we talked about detachment and so many things that could be stopping you from being your best person, your best self. And there is a way out. I encourage you to look at the show notes and check out Edie's resources that she's gotten together and her podcast also. That'll all be linked in. And Edie, the name of your website again is
edieanne.com. So my name, edieanne.com.
whether you're going through a period of loss or you're supporting somebody who is going through a difficult time, we're here for you. Until next time, I hope that this has helped you become the boss of loss, and I'll see you next time.